Thank you all for joining this event this afternoon. My name is Lauren Camera. I've spent the last 2 decades covering higher education and education policy writ large, most recently as the senior writer for US News and World Report. Today, I'm a freelance writer and a content strategist for Whiteboard Advisors, and we are very excited to share with you a new report, or as we call it a little bit tongue-in-cheek, a new college guide for kids who think differently. Of course, this isn't really a college guide, but it is a very important jumping off point for families and students who have all the information in the world on colleges and universities, but not nearly enough on alternative pathways. And that is turning out to be a bit of a problem. Today's high school graduates are thinking creatively about what will serve them best after graduation. In part, it's a reaction to rising tuition at traditional four-year colleges and universities and ballooning student debt. Their fresh thinking about what's next is also driven by a new landscape of more affordable certificate and degree programs that offer real-world experience aligned to a clear pathway to work. Yes, college still matters, but a four-year bachelor's degree is no longer the only best option. So how do we help students and their families navigate those options? And to help us answer those questions and more, I would love to introduce you to our panel of experts. They all played a role in developing this guide, so thank you so much, everyone, for that help. Starting off, we have Jeff Selingo, New York Times bestselling author. His new book, Dream School, Finding the College That's Right for You, is hot off the presses, and I'm excited to get to talk to him a little bit about that. We have Tade Oyerende, the chancellor and founder of Campus. It's a 2-year program that's featured in the guide. Jill Cook, the executive director of the American Student Counselor Association, and Dr. Carlos Carvala, the president and provost of the University of Austin. So thanks everyone again for being here, and we look forward to a great discussion. Jeff, I'd love to start with you. Obviously, your new book, Dream School, hot off the presses. You spent months talking to families, students, admissions officers about how to figure out which schools will serve students best and support their personalities and goals versus, targeting so-called dream school due to prestige or what other interest they might have. This idea of, choosing a school based on what aligns with your interest is really tied to the goal of this report, which is to kind of elevate this growing and diverse ecosystem of post-secondary options available today. Can you share with us a little bit about what you heard from folks, how they're navigating these options?
Well, I think part of it, well, first of all, it's great to be here, Lauren. It's good to see you again and this great panel. This is an important conversation, I think, to have right now. And what I heard from families and counselors over the last couple of years of reporting this new book is that they want options, more optionality for what comes after high school. And that could even include they want more options within colleges, right? They want permission to think more broadly than has often been offered, and in some communities, a very narrow offering. It's basically elite college or bust. And then other institutions, it's a 4-year degree only. Doesn't even offer the possibility of a 2-year degree. At least that's the pressure that they feel. And in other places, the pressure to even feel around non-college options, but that have a pathway to a better life. And really, what I heard over and over again is that parents and students want happiness. When we asked them what they most wanted to get out of the life after college, it was about finding a fulfilling career, not necessarily a high-paying career. They wanted their kids to find a sense of belonging wherever they went so that they could find their people, and obviously hopefully create lifelong friends. But overall, everything that they pointed to was that they wanted more choice. And they feel like many people say, well, you're overwhelmed with choices. There's 3,000, 4,000 colleges and universities out there. But in many ways, for a lot of communities, those choices feel narrow. Most people go to college within 75 miles of home, so they don't have a lot of options. And secondly, they want it more than just what institutions that looked alike. And that's what they felt like. There's all these 4-year options. There's all these 2-year options. That's not real choice. And that's what they want. How do we give them real choice?
Thank you so much. Jill, you mentioned during our interview, I loved this point you shared, that major misconception about school counselors is that you only push college, and that could not be further from the truth. A bachelor's degree can be a good return on investment, but the 4-year college experience is not the be all end all for every child. Could you talk a little bit about how you lay out this massive landscape of options for families? And I'm also curious about whether these conversations are changing given the shifting workforce needs.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And it's important to note that today's school counselors are not the guidance counselors of old, where the perception might have been that they were just in high school and that they just help students with the college application process. That is not what today's school counselors are. They are in kindergarten through 12th grade, and they work with students on their academic development, their social and emotional development, and their career development, which is all the post-secondary opportunities. And even this conversation about, post-secondary options, it doesn't just start with school counselors and students in high school. It is a K-12 process as well. It looks very different at each level, but it certainly is taking place. And so school counselors today work with each and every student in a school. Each and every student. Primarily, they get at all students through their classroom instruction, where a lot of this work takes place, talking to students about options, looking at interest inventories and values inventories, and what they like to do and how they like to spend their time. Then they also work with students in small groups and clearly work with students individually. And school counselors are fantastic. They are the heartbeat of a school because they're often the not just the hub of the school, but the liaison with other community organizations. So there are the landscape is changing so rapidly. School counselors cannot possibly know all the jobs and careers and opportunities out there, but they certainly know how to help families and students know where to go when they want to do exploration, when they want to know more, whether it's about job opportunities, military options, or higher education. And those conversations happen all the time. And along with this work, as we talk about all the opportunities available, we need to also think about, how we can have the conversation and not make options that are not higher education seem lesser than. Um, it- it- you know, at a parent night, a family night, back to school night, well, they're going to all raise their hands. Of course, I want my child to go to college. Of course, that's what I want. So, how can we make and celebrate all the options that students have available? And school counselors are absolutely working to do this. We hear from businesses and industries every single day at my association who are wanting to get in front of school counselors so they know about the job openings and the job opportunities in their profession, because they want students and families to know about them, that provide training, can provide for education where the earnings are, they're good earnings. And so how can we lift up and celebrate all of those and help continue the communication between the educational systems and what the community needs? Sometimes that just I'm surprised often that there are not conversations taking place at the local level about what the workforce needs are, and between them and the school district about how they can help prepare students to create those workers who can fill those jobs. But all that to say, school counselors are critical to this work, and I would encourage you to have conversations with your school counselor about this.
That's great. Thanks. So in addition to, traditional 4-year degrees, we have, 4-year degree programs that are starting to think very differently about how to provide an education that is perhaps more aligned with the workforce, or perhaps more aligned with gaps that they feel really need to be filled. And Dr. Carvalha, an important through line of the report is that, college still matters, and programs like the University of Austin recognize the value of a four-year degree, but also recognize that the model is somewhat broken. Either it's too expensive, or failing to provide the workforce experiences, or lacking opportunities to really own those critical thinking skills, or whatever it might be. Could you share a little bit with us about, what you're doing differently and what the reception has been like so far?
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me. And I couldn't agree more that we need more choice. And I think the University of Austin was born as a result of that, as recognizing that for some reason the system became in some ways very uniform. If you point to a big state school, they all are very, very similar, right? And I came from one. I spent 16 years at the University of Texas in Austin. And we can go and talk about specifics of what they are doing well or wrong, or let's not focus on that. Let's focus on the fact that they are very similar. I think there's a lot of uniformity amongst them. And I think options is something that was desperately needed in the system. So we started a new school that has a unique combination of something that is really refocusing on the past, the idea of building a core curriculum that is inspired by the great books, by the best of Western civilization, focuses very, very strongly on the American founding and experiment. But that's just one component of our curriculum. That's about 1 year of our curriculum. And after that, we have an enormous amount of freedom and opportunities for students to be really, truly entrepreneurs and look for things to do that fit their interests and needs, and provide them with opportunities to work while studying, provide opportunities to develop skills beyond what they learn in the classroom. So marrying the old and the new in a way, in a small environment, that again is unique in its combination of things we're looking for. But I think providing that very clearly to the world and giving students a choice of saying, okay, if I'm somebody that really likes to read books, wants to spend a lot of time, and maybe for a year, deeply thinking about some old questions of human existence, but I also want to be involved in, developing apps through learning AI and so on. Well, that mix exists at the University of Austin, and we're trying to do that while making it more affordable. We're now here in a free tuition model. Right now, we charge $0, which it's a very, very difficult thing to do, but we're doing with the support of our donors and all the philanthropic support that we have. But the idea being that we're trying to make sure that we build something that it's not going to be bloated, it's not going to be spending dollars in directions that are not needed. Really focus on those two components that we're trying to put together as an education opportunity.
So building the plane as you're flying it is what you're saying.
Part of it,
yes. Tade, campus is perhaps, the best example of a program that's really doing things differently, really shaking up the post-secondary landscape and thinking, trying to think smart and differently about how to connect students, especially those who have traditionally been locked out of higher education, with the best professors across the country, and really equip them with workforce skills at a fraction of the cost of other programs. For those who might not be familiar with your program, tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. In simple terms, we started off as a tech startup building online learning software, but decided we actually wanted to have much bigger impact. And so we acquired a 2-year college in California, and we're transforming it to be, I think, much more dynamic and aligned with what young people need to be successful today. So for us, that means a few things. One, a radical focus on completion rates at the 2-year level. The average community college has a 27% graduation rate, and our first few cohorts are in the 40s, and we're aiming for 51%. And we do that in a few ways. The first is all classes are taught live online. I think this population needs synchronous education if they're going to be persisting. It's very difficult to stay motivated when you're just watching pre-recorded videos. The second thing is that they're all taught, all these classes, by a distributed network of faculty from top 50 universities across the country: Princeton, NYU, UCLA. This inspires students, typically who are first in their family to go to college or coming from a wide variety of backgrounds, to basically imagine a better life for themselves than the one they've gotten. I think having these faculty blows their mind in a way that really opens up their optimism and helps them persist. And then, of course, finally, no debt. I think young people today have said we're not doing loans anymore. We know Uncle so-and-so, we know Auntie so-and-so who, went to Eastern Western Polytechnic, took on $50,000 of debt and still can't get a great job. And they're not going to do it. I think they're much more savvy than my generation millennials were when we were finishing high school, 2008, 2009. Now, I think a lot of folks have talked about choice. I think one way of sort of interpreting what Jeff got in the way of feedback is another way of saying is like, I just don't like the options in front of me. It's like you don't need more choice if you love all the options in front of you. It's like I think part of what I like about the University of Austin, part of what I think we're trying to do at campus is just make the existing options better. And so with campus, I don't know that we need to radically rethink everything about adult or sort of post-secondary education. It's like, can we make it affordable? It's like I don't know that we need to radically rethink everything about higher education, but like, can we make the schools talk to each other? Like if you go to a two-year college, how about you transfer into a four-year school and you get to keep your credits? Like you don't have to take the same classes over. So there's so many basic things that we can do to make the existing options much better. One student told me the way they think about campus, because we're a two-year program that students transfer into, we have students who've been admitted to NYU, ASU, UCLA. They said, I see campus as a 50% discount on getting my bachelor's degree. It's like, wow, like you're going to be in our marketing videos. It's like you use a Pell Grant, you have no loans for the first 2 years, and then you transfer into a four-year school of your dreams to complete with no debt from the first 2 years. And I think that's how we think about focus, like how do we make the existing options much better.
And allows you to be nimble, right? And sort of how you operate and the programs that the certificates that you provide and being really in tune with the market needs.
That's right. I mean, that's right. Now more than ever, I think skills that employers are looking for graduates to possess, the skepticism that students have around the traditional institution's ability to adapt to a landscape increasingly evolving because of AI is at an all-time high. I think it's going to be a challenge for all of us, but we're hoping to be a part of the solution.
Yeah. One of the competing ideas in this report is that of, workforce skills like coding or AI managing, data science, et cetera, versus these human life skills like critical thinking, collaboration, communication. In today's world, where employers are interested in hiring folks with tangible skills, it's almost criminal for a degree not to require students to participate in some type of like internship or apprenticeship. At the same time, though, how do we ensure kids build these durable life skills that are transferable and important to all types of jobs? How do you guys see the push and pull between those two priorities?
Well, I would say that's where your handy dandy school counselor can come right in. Our association has student standards, and we call them mindsets and behaviors that students should know and be able to demonstrate when they leave us. And it is these very skills. And what we've heard is that from many employers is that the specific skill that might be needed to do a certain job often can be taught, but exactly what you're talking about, Lauren, these life skills, these knowing how to work well with others, how to be a self-advocate, those are things they want future employees coming to them with, and that's where the K-12 system can be of support and help.
I would add that in our view, the humanities play an enormous role in forming an individual and providing them with a set of fundamental understanding of society and the world around them that is transferable to lots of things that they would do in life. And that's what the kind of combination that we're trying to put forward in Austin, where you spend some time really focusing deeply in the humanities while then having lots of opportunities to learn skills, really skills that are more translatable immediately, right? And to Tade's point of the adaptability, I think that those skills are changing, and they're changing very, very fast. So the sort of building in a nimble structure that allows it to adapt very quickly while maintaining this sort of rigorous baseline on the humanities, right? The second part of our curriculum is built in a way to be very flexible, to be very adaptable, and not to move so slow as the system typically moves, given the structure that's in place.
And Lauren, I think that we know many of these skills are also learned in work-based learning, right? So whether those are apprenticeships or internships or co-ops, or job shadowing. It could be project-based learning. It could be undergraduate research at colleges and universities. And I think this is one of the big tensions right now in higher ed is college as a focus on kind of academic learning and college focused on hands-on or experiential learning. And I always think that colleges felt like their job was kind of the classroom, the traditional classroom learning. The faculty really leaned into that. And now I think most students who go to college want experiential learning. Most employers want students who have skills that are often, by the way, learned on the job, not even at schools with experiential learning. But, most early career hires are now coming from the intern pools of employers. And so I think really where this is pushing traditional colleges and universities is around this idea of how do we build more experiential learning into the curriculum, and where we see more of the popular institutions, even the Northeasterns of the world, for example, they have the co-op built right into that model.
And not just those opportunities at the higher ed level. I mean, that is for the K-12 system as well. Apprenticeship programs in high school or even middle school, internships. And there are more and more school districts and some states with that specific focus. Some have really looked at the Swiss apprenticeship model as a way to think about this in the United States. How can we create lots of on-ramps and off-ramps and for individuals that it's not just a linear path?
Yeah, on this one, I'm a little bit torn. On one hand, it's like pre-AI, I think probably all of us on the panel, we had our roadmaps and it was like apprenticeships and co-ops and all these things. Man, with AI, it's just so hard to know what are the skills that are going to be relevant, not 10 years from now, 2 years from now. I think, our whole country, like it's like moving like a cruise ship. We've been like, let's get everyone to learn how to code, and let's like girls who code and like Black kids who code and everything code. And then it's like, oh snap, like 80% of AI of code is going to be AI written in 12 months. It's like, what's going on? And so I think it's more like I think the work that probably University of Austin is doing is probably even more important. How do we teach like these foundational principles that how do we light a fire within young people that will, sort of get them set up mentally to learn and adapt, sort of take responsibility for their own learning, for their own adaptation in an increasingly dynamic world. I think it has to be a big part of it. It's one of the reasons I do think that college in particular is useful. I don't think of campus as like a trade school. I think, we're not a university. We're not inventing new knowledge. We're not doing research, but we are trying to create real adults and prepare them for a real world, and yet also get them useful skills. So quite frankly, I haven't nailed it yet. I mean, I'm like, man, we're gonna be shredding up our curriculum every 18 months. There's got to be a better way than that. And even we talk to employers, and employers don't know. Employers are like, well, we tried this, AI thing and it kind of worked, but then something terrible happened because the AI hallucinated and we're rolling it back. It's super crazy. I think we all have to be extremely dynamic. And I'm like thinking about this like every month, like on a monthly basis. What's our strategy? What's our strategy?
Well, that's a, perfect segue to my next question, Tade, about how we cannot avoid talking about how AI is going to be used to drive even more change in the sector. So I'd love to hear from others, how do you see it playing a role in how students choose their pathway, or even what those pathways look like?
Well, Lauren, I mean, one of the interesting things is the role AI, and I would love to hear from Jill on this too, is that are being used to supplement or be additive to what school counselors are doing, right? I talk to so many people now who are using AI as an agent in the college search or in life after high school. I think I always warn them. There are obviously hallucinations and there are issues, but to check. But I think it's a good first step for conversations. I think especially for students coming in to meet with their counselor to maybe hone in on the right questions to ask the human counselor. I think it's great. I think it's great to try to narrow in on some of their options that we've been talking about. And there's so much more research now they can do with AI. So even just using AI as a to help in the college research or in the post high school search, I think is a really interesting use case. right now beyond kind of the impact it could potentially have on students and their jobs later on.
Yeah, Jeff, no, you're absolutely right. That is being utilized. But I think it's also important to note that, do that in advance or come to your school counselor with some information, that the importance of the human touch as well. How can we utilize all these ever evolving technologies and still and still not forget that humans are part of this process too. But just in terms of what I'm hearing from school counselors, just utilizing AI in their own work, and not just at the high school level for college or career development activities. I mean, even in one of our school counselor of the year finalists, she's a middle school counselor, and she created a bot for her students when she was doing classroom work with students, and a student needed just some one-on-one time to let out feelings, created a bot that would just essentially listened to the student. It freed up her hands to do other kinds of work. And the student, for some students, that's an effective tool. Utilizing it to, all educators using it to create lesson plans. We have school counselors who can use AI to take those student standards that I mentioned and plug them into AI around a specific topic, and it will create a lesson plan to address those mindsets and behaviors that the school counselor wants to focus on in any particular lesson. We know of some companies out there utilizing AI specifically in the realm of career development, trying to create these personalized opportunities for students through the use of AI to do some career exploration of seeking out in looking at individuals in careers they're interested in, and then it'll take them somewhere else based on how they answered. So it's instead of just a real straightforward or taking a pen and paper assessment, utilizing that technology to really hone in on what might be individualized for a student. But yeah, it's pretty exciting and overwhelming and changes daily.
I think that's totally right. I think the career exploration point, to Jill's point, is crucial. We find with students 18, our students are typically 18 to 25. They have no clue of all the breadth of the menu of options in front of them. They know like 8 careers, and they don't want to be any of those 8 careers, and so they're rolling burritos at Chipotle while they figure it out. And it's like, hey, no, what are you naturally gifted in? What are you passionate about? What is the world willing to pay you for at the intersection of those 2 things? You put that into ChatGPT, it'll come up with 20 examples, 3 of which are going to make this kid go crazy. Like, oh, I would love to do that. And so I think helping our counselors, we have for every 50 students, we have a success coach, is what we call them. Just get more creative with helping students figure out what they're interested in has been one really positive way to help students. I think the real challenge for all of us is, how do we measure students' competencies in a world where cheating has never been easier? I don't think we've really sounded the alarm yet, but I interviewed a kid, no offense to anyone from NYU, I interviewed a student from a graduate from NYU computer science. This guy couldn't do the stuff I was doing in 9th grade. I'm like, man, you ChatGPT'd your way through college. And it's really scary, because I think we're going to realize that some of these credentials that we are bestowing upon students may not confer or at least convey the same level of mastery that they used to just 4 years ago. Scary.
So yeah, so let me add to that this is a incredible. So if you take the optimistic view here, is you take all of a sudden we have the ability to have customized teaching plans, customized ways to deliver content in amazing, efficient ways for students, which again puts colleges in a position of having to show that they can add something on top of it, right? And that's going to be a constant sort of like race going on between the traditional colleges, how they deliver knowledge, and how these machineries that we're coming up with allows us to do it. And again, at Austin, we're trying to embed that in our development here, try to be in the forefront of certain things. If it can be done effectively with technology, let's do it, let's embrace it, let's bring that into our curriculum. On the other hand, you have this now, the negative side, what Tade mentioned is like, well, how do you stop cheating, right? How do you stop cheating? That's going to be a huge problem. It is already a huge problem in place. Again, in our sort of first part of our curriculum, because of its traditional approach to it, we're being very old school. We're basically saying, listen, in these classes where you're reading these books, you're expected to, did I freeze here? Can you
No,
hear me?
you're good.
I'm back. Okay.
Yep.
In these classes where you're expected to be reading these books, we're gonna be asking you to write exams in class. We're gonna be quizzing you in old school ways, every day. Your reading has to be done. You cannot just put that book through ChatGPT and get some bullet points out of it. We're gonna really engage you in person in order for you to get to where we need to be. So it's gonna be a combination of different attempts, and I think that there is room for old school approaches to really certify people that, okay, this. Now, on the certification side, on more factual based type things, I think that there are opportunities for schools to develop structures to really test competence and say, listen, you go ahead and do things on your own with a bot and sort of acquire the knowledge, but then you're gonna have to come in and show me that you can do certain things in order for me to be able to give you a stamp that actually has been accomplished.
Yeah, I think the cheating thing is obviously sort of, again, like building the plane while you're flying it. Almost a K-12 issue, even more so than a higher ed issue in some ways, right? Helping students who to use it, not just to know how to use it to cheat, right? But to understand how to manage it and almost be an orchestrator of it so that they can push or add on to the already very human characteristics that AI isn't going to take away, right? How do we use this tool to think more creatively, to maybe give us options that we wouldn't have thought of because of any number of reasons. So yeah, it's definitely certainly something the higher ed sector is grappling with, but I would imagine also starting at K-12. I'm curious though. One of these ideas that we close out the report with, and Jill, you kind of touched on this in answering one of your first questions, is that while college still matters, it's not the only best option, right? And so in this new era of post-secondary options, I feel like we need to start presenting the pathways in a way that says none of these is lesser than the other. Yes, they have different price points, they have different outcomes, but one should not be presented necessarily as a consolation prize over another. I'm curious your thoughts on this. Like, is this doable? Is it truly possible?
It's absolutely doable and possible. And there are many places that are doing it, not just in the high schools when the kids get their acceptance letter and they start putting up the pennants of the colleges that all their students are going to. They're now celebrating all the jobs. If they're going into the military, if they're going to the community college, if they're going straight into the workforce or an apprenticeship, but finding ways to celebrate all of those options. And it's absolutely doable to present it that way. It's for so long education that it's your way out and up. My parents were both the first ones in their families to go to college, and they both went on to become college professors because it was instilled in them that was the way out of the poverty in which they lived. I have 4 kids. 2 of mine went to college, 2 of mine did not go to college. And that was as a parent, I had to wrestle with that a little bit, but it ties back to what we've been saying. What are they good at? What is their passion? And for 2 of them, it led somewhere else. And they're all beautiful and successful and happy. So how can we have that conversation? Not where's your son or daughter going to college? It's what are their plans after high school? We have to normalize it in all aspects.
Yeah, I like one thing that I try to do is to talk to people about the value added. So there's people like to point to things like, oh, on average, people who go to college make, this much money more. That's the sort of like income associated with going to college, but that's not a value added. That's not taking into account the selective aspect of people that are probably going to do well almost no matter what in some ways, and adjusting for that, right? I think The Economist is a place that has a very good college rankings. I don't know if you call it a rankings, but basically it's a measure of value added. And when you look at those lists, you see something very surprising. I think, in those lists. Now, within colleges, right? Very surprising with the colleges that actually have a lot of value added. But the point being is that once you put the conversation in those terms, you can say there's lots of ways in which you can add a lot of value to your life that is not based on where you are, and it's not just college, and go away from the only path is this one. So that's one way I think we can do a lot better communication of the the actual value added of different alternatives.
And I think the other thing is we do really need to this ROI belief has kind of entered the lexicon, and I think when we think about ROI, the the return is often talked about, but the investment is not as much. And I think that in my new book in Dream School, we looked at this net price to earnings ratio, and it's fascinating because there are a lot of low cost alternatives out there that provide really good returns. But if we're only looking at the returns, you know, well, then you want to go to, highly selective institutions, you want to major in STEM or business. Well, not everybody wants to do that. And so, this is what frustrates me about these high earning rankings, which really focus on the very few majors at a very few number of institutions where the earnings are highest. But that's not the vast majority of students out there that are looking for not only a good outcome, that return, but families who are saying, you know what? This is a long life. We have multiple kids we have to invest in. We may have to invest in our retirement. We may have aging parents. Oh, and by the way, we might want to continue to invest in our kids even after they do their next thing because, we want to give them a good start. We want to maybe help them with a house or whatever, start a family, whatever it might be. And I think that this idea that parents have been kind of families have been forced into just investing in higher ed no matter what, that it was worth the investment. I think we're finally having a real conversation about, okay, we have this pot of money or we have these resources to spend. What is our best return on that?
I'll be the dissenting voice here. I'm a bit more of the mind that we just need to make college cheaper, and more accessible and higher quality. Like in 1995, does anyone know what the admissions rate was to UCLA? 42%. Today it's 7%. I mean, come on. If you could go to UCLA with an almost 1 in 2 chance, not go into debt, who wouldn't want to do that? I think we need to bring back that. And I think we have to take a real structural look at the cost model. I think, and if you look at Michigan, if you look at Berkeley, if you go to UVA, it's all the same. They were all in the 40s and they're all below 10 now. And that, or I guess UVA is about 15%, but it's the trend is clear. We've made our great institutions way more selective, way more expensive, and deliver way less value. So the R is also come down. I think if we can figure out how to reverse those trends, I'm feeling pretty good about giving people that opportunity. Now, of course, not everyone needs to go to college for certain careers, but I still get nervous about the risks of what happens in our economic cycles. I mean, we know that the economy is a cycle and the downturns are going to come and they're going to go. We get excited and it happens. It's happened for as long as we can measure. And the first people who get cut, we're seeing this in Silicon Valley over the last 3 years, is these fresh out of high school or fresh out of college jobs. They're the first ones that employers eliminate when they tighten the belt. And so I do want to make sure that we're not sort of building a sort of dystopian view of the world where unless the big wigs on Wall Street say that people get employment, then there's nothing else to do after high school. I kind of look at Northeastern as a really great model. Why don't universities take responsibility for also that first job? Why don't we think of university as we're going to get you whatever you want to do, or community colleges for trades and those kinds of things. We're going to not only help you get the skills and the knowledge, but we're also going to help you get those first learning experiences, get that internship, get that first job as a part of your studies at the university. I think, one of the things that, not to tell our secret roadmap publicly, we're exploring is how can we take responsibility within a company for apprenticeships? And we could just place students, you come to campus, you get 2 years, and then you get placed for all students into an apprenticeship after your 2 degree at a 4-year at a company. And the great news is if the company decides, hey, the economics don't make sense anymore and they're pivoting, you still have a 2-year degree that is a transferable credential into lots of other things that gives the students options, not just when they're leaving high school, but throughout the rest of their life. So my kind of view is I kind of think universities and 2-year institutions just need to take a broader responsibility for the work side. I don't want to put it all on the companies.
Yeah, I agree. If we had an ability to have an equity model between the student coming in and investing in that student and then having the success of that student be part of my success, that'd be amazing. And I think we are working on something like that. We have, again, as I said, right, we're not charging tuition, and we're hoping to maintain that for as long as we can, with the idea that as eventually they will see the value that they accrue from them to them as a function of what we did here, and that gets back to us, right? So that model, I think, is a model that really aligns incentives and really gets us responsible to help them get to where they want to be, and have skin in the game for that.
I'm curious, we have resources like US News, World Report, college rankings, and the college scorecard, and lots of clearinghouses where students can go and find information about colleges and universities. How do we get more information about these, programs like campus, right, into their hands of students and families?
Well, as an accredited college, we are on the college scorecard, and we
Yep.
are. I don't think US News know we exist yet. I wonder how they think us. But I do think the institutions should be transparent. I think you've got to put your data out there, and no funny games with the data number crunching. But I think just ultimately your brand and your reputation is going to be known, and it's going to be known based on the outcomes that you deliver. And so I think as much responsibility as we can take for those outcomes, I want to take. And I do think that the two-year schools in particular, and even our university, should just take more responsibility for the outcomes.
Agreed. I think that we're focused much more on outcomes, and I think that often traditional colleges and universities haven't, faculty in particular haven't thought it was their job to find students a job. And I think that's changing. What worries me though, Lauren, right now is at a time of constrained resources in higher ed. I think one of the things that is changing is career services. So a decade ago, career services was like kind of the hot new commodity on campuses. Campuses were investing in them. I did a study, I think back in 2016, 2017 for Entangled, that showed, for example, that colleges talked a big game about career services, but really didn't invest much in them. And then they started to invest in them. But I fear that at a time, colleges will still advertise that, but actually won't put the investment that they need in there. That does worry me.
We have a couple of questions coming in from audience members. If you guys are comfortable with that, I'm curious. This may be more of a question for Jill, but are college counselors working at all with the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery? It's basically
The ASVAB.
so to help yeah.
Yeah.
So help for those who don't know, it helps students understand what they might be interested in. I think it was like 10th grade, really, and that students explore this. Yeah, so they can begin early on to focus their post-secondary opportunities on what they want to do. How does that play into sort of some of the work you guys are doing?
School counselors are often the liaisons when in any military branch comes into the schools to present or to have a table in the cafeteria, and school counselors are very much often involved with the ASVAB, giving that to students, providing that, and they actually, there are a lot of resources for school counselors related to that, and how they can then help work with students to help them make informed decisions. But yeah, it's part of what school counselors do in this whole career development piece.
And then, Tade, to your point of lowering costs, can the panel address the budgetary drain of being administratively heavy, as so many higher ed institutions are?
Well, yeah, I mean, the psychology of these institutions generally is upside down. I think you kind of have to have simple. My mom taught me this when I was 7. You spend less than you earn. It's like I think it's sort of like a sort of basic principle that we have to sort of normalize. Otherwise, students are going to pay the cost. And yeah, that's our approach at campus. We don't, I mean, we obviously, we raise philanthropic dollars, but they're for extra things, for students to, go out to, a transfer university without taking on as much debt, those kind of things. And we've designed our business model, just the core economics, to be self-sustaining. So I know it's not easy for a lot of institutions that, again, they're like these cruise ships. It's not easy to change, but I do think it is possible to do these things at a high level of sustainability.
All right, I have one more question. Let's see here. I would love to know, kind of like a hot potato question, and I hope we get a really good answer from Jeff because he just wrote this book. What advice for parents and students who are beginning to have these conversations about life after high school? What is your advice?
Well, I think part of it is I think it goes back to what you want to do, and that includes, by the way, where you want to go if you want to go to college. I think that most people just assume, well, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to go to a 4-year college, I'm going to go and major in this. We don't really have a lot of conversations about it. We just make a lot of assumptions. So, for example, we did a survey of more than 3,000 parents for this book, and one of the things we asked them is, how important is selectivity or prestige to you in the college search? 16% said it was very important. How important is it to your kids? 26% said it was important to their kids. How important is it to others in your community? 64%. Right? So most people, I think, are making decisions on how this is going to be perceived in their community. And I think that's really critical here, is that we have a discussion as a school, as a family, about what we want out of the college experience or out of the experience after college.
And I'll just add to that, that's perfect, but also focus on the conversation about finding the match about, the type of institution, the type of program, the type of values you're looking for, the type of exact experience you're looking for. The mismatch is a huge problem in college. Putting people where there's not the right match for them is just a recipe for disaster, going back to this point of like completion rates, right? It's just not gonna work. And you end up in a situation where nobody wins and you incur debt and so on. So the matching and not just going with I need to go to that school because everybody around me tells me that I need to do. It's a very important thing.
And I think it's important to listen to the students, to the young people. Often families, parents project what they see and want for their child and are not listening to what they're saying. One of my children who did go to college, I wanted her to go to my alma mater and go to a big school with a football team and Saturdays, and she didn't even apply. No, she was like, no, I want to go to a school where I can study. She's a dancer, and she chose a very small fine art school in a downtown setting, and it was perfect for her, and that was her choice. And so letting them make their own choices. My 2 children who didn't go to college, one, my oldest daughter, she has bipolar, and during her teenage years, her high school years, she struggled mightily, and probably the smartest of the bunch, but higher education would have not been good for her mental health at that time, and so she went straight to work. And today she is the manager. She's married and is a mom and is the manager of 2 martial arts studios, where she is a martial arts, and she's an MMA fighter, as is her husband. And so she found a place that's where she needs to be. My son, my other child who didn't go to college, he's an actor, and he actually, I called it his apprenticeship program at starting at age 11 when he went to New York to do a Broadway show, and has since done 5 more Broadway shows and is still a working actor at age 27. But when he graduated from high school, he was like, why would I go to college for 4 years and incur the expense when I'm already doing the thing I would go to college for? So for him, it was just, he'd been living the apprenticeship program for 7 years prior to that. So, honestly, it was not even a question for either of them. It was more for me as a parent to work through some of my own feelings. Hence why I say, listen to your kids and what they're telling you.
Todd, any last advice?
No, I think it's put more responsibility on institutions. I think we should be adapting, we should be dynamic, we should be able to raise resources, capital, pool capital, innovate and actually create new solutions to make, I think, higher education better, cheaper, higher quality, and more accessible. So I think that aligns, that probably is a through line between all 4 of us, what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, thanks everyone for joining. I really appreciate it. Look forward to following where these pathways lead students, including Jeff. I know you have a high schooler who's about to start this adventure. So maybe that's your next book.
Well, thank you. It was great to be here. I think these are important questions to be asking, and I'm just glad that we're asking them. And I guess the last point I just want to make is just going back to that last point about what people think about others in their community are thinking. That's the hardest thing to get over. As Jill knows, I mean, we see this in high schools. I see this every spring in high schools, where on social media or the school itself is touting people who have gone on to college. We have college selection days now, May 1st, in some high schools, where students wear sweatshirts of where they're going. That's a lot of this is about changing culture. And that is the hardest part. We could talk about all the stuff that we talked about for the last hour, but changing the culture, I think, is going to be the hardest piece of this.
Yeah,
So I'm
absolutely.
going to drop the mic and then I guess we're done.
Well, thank you all for being here, and thank you to the participants who joined today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.